In my previous video, When Moon, I revealed the time frame in which I believe the market will be topping. Think of the word top as less of a precise moment and more of a changing energy. We have seen the eclipses act perfectly as pivot points for the duration of this cycle, each marking a low pivot, a high pivot, a low pivot, all the way up to the top. And we've seen how the seasons of eclipses reveal a precise blueprint of tops and bottoms since Bitcoin's inception. If this is new to you, be sure to watch that video. Given the foresight of the cosmos and an abundance of influencers calling for later and later tops, I found it urgent to bring you this video to add in more confirmations of why I still believe that March timeframe will mark the top for the majority of assets. Let's first build up to that moment by starting on January 16th when Mars is in opposition. This particular alignment can fuel ambition, courage, and desire to take action, which is convenient because 4 days after this is the inauguration of Trump on January 20th. I think many people have forgotten there were memes made about how many executive orders he passed in 2016. In his first 45 days, he issued 24 executive orders, beating Obama's record of 19. Some of Trump's orders were very high profile and controversial, and his administration had a strong focus on rapid action that was truly unprecedented. Given his defiant leadership style hasn't changed, I expect after his inauguration we'll see a similar flurry of action, and some of what he does will be targeted at crypto, bringing much needed changes to the space. I think it's very likely that he will pass some of the rumored legislation such as no capital gains tax on US-based cryptos, which will set a trap for retail investors by recreating the familiar idea of a new paradigm for the crypto industry that has marked so many market tops before. In the long term, that's great news, but it wouldn't affect your taxes until at least 2026. Waiting that long will likely mean selling for far less than you'd have made if you just paid capital gains tax instead. So there again, they're creating both hype to raise prices and more psychological resistance to selling just by talking about these potential changes. After the inauguration, the FOMC convenes on January 28th to discuss monetary policy and economic conditions, including an assessment on interest rates. This meeting extends into the new moon on January 29th, which typically marks our microcycle tops. Throughout 2024, we saw sell-offs after almost every single new moon into the full moon, so be prepared for a dip, or at least somewhat stalled energy. The Fed isn't expected to lower rates, so everyone will assume that's why the market stalled. This pause could give Trump a moment to speak on behalf of global economic conditions, as between the new moon and the full moon on February 5th, the U.S. International Trade in Goods and Services report is released, which details trade balances, imports, and exports. It's possible Trump could use the report to bolster the markets in some way, because after we clear the resistance of the February 12th full moon, there are no major events that I'm aware of, and the markets should be in a frenzy of green. Keep in mind that the energy of the full moon may pass 5 days prior to February 7th, so we could get a pretty aggressive move to the upside around here. From there, the market should be rallying until around the February 27th new moon, or up to 5 days after on March 4th. I think this time frame could very well mark the top for Bitcoin, given that it is the final new moon or microcycle top before the eclipse season arrives. Remember, Bitcoin has peaked before the third eclipse season in every single cycle since its inception. Bitcoin's peak is good news for alts though, because Bitcoin dominance will drop and flow into them. What we will be looking for is Bitcoin to stall out while alts are pumping, and that will give further confluence to a market top. This is in 2021. You can see all of the altcoins are exploding towards the end of that distribution for Bitcoin. So my red alert for the 2025 cycle top is somewhere around the March timeframe. Do not rotate your profits into other coins that appear to be at a good price if one of your other coins is done well. It's possible for some alts to lag, but if you're actually successful in rotation plays like this, it's a red flag for overall market conditions. Without total expansion of the market, it's just a churning of liquidity as conditions start to turn down. You've got to take something completely off the table, or you'll just be handing your gains back to the market. In every previous cycle top, there has been a violent sell-off before the third eclipse season, and this February 27th is the last new moon and potential high, giving just 2 weeks before the eclipse season. This cycle seems to have more of a slow shift in momentum during the eclipse seasons that seems to slow cook people into complacency rather than an abrupt sell-off. So it's possible Bitcoin enters distribution but doesn't fall from the top range until the eclipse season. March 14th, the total lunar eclipse will arrive, and with it, a bunch of cosmic events. There will be a full blood moon, which is fitting for the season, and immediately after the eclipse, Mercury goes retrograde until April 7th. This is really important because think about the root word merc and how it pertains to finance. Merchant, merchandise, mercantile. Mercury is the planet of commerce, so when it goes retrograde, it means finance appears to reverse or stall out. The shifting energy also matches the negative energy of these eclipses. That's particularly important if you hold XRP because it's connected to Mercury through the number 23 and 14 or 41. Not to mention the X is part of the original Latin root word for Merc, so XRP will be directly influenced by Mercury. March 18th to 19th is the FOMC's second meeting of the year, and March 20th brings the spring equinox, which also happens between the eclipses and can sometimes mark the exact day the markets decide to pivot. So there's undoubtedly a major energy shift that takes place during the eclipse season. I suspect any narrative that we've been hearing about leading into this time frame could end up being a catalyst for the market to crash. The solar eclipse arrives March 29th, and if you're suddenly very confident in prices going higher, remind yourself that it's probably a good time to sell. Although remember when I say top, I mean more of a change in energy during a season. So around March, I think we should see diminished energy in Bitcoin price despite bullish sentiment and a potential black swan. Each recent eclipse season has been met with war escalations, and this time around I've seen many rumors of a new pandemic in its early stages, which also has identical timing to when C19 started to unfold. There's also a certain university conducting a similar themed simulation in 2025 just as they did in 2019, so I'm keeping my eye on this. If the pandemic narrative continues, it's possible that it will merge with the war narrative. I can't imagine many people will want to go with the program, so civil conflict is possible if you know what I mean. I'm not sure if maybe the flu is just a distraction or not, but ultimately the war in the Middle East will remain an aspect of the eclipse season for the foreseeable future. And a lot of the numerological connections I found were still pointing in that direction, which especially for 2025, it brings up a 9, and there were many 9s that still pertain to Iran or the war, as well as cryptocurrency and Trump. The mainstream economic events that immediately follow the eclipse season could also be planned to pull in more exit liquidity. On April 23rd, the Fed releases the Beige Book, which discusses economic conditions, which could perhaps appear positive due to the wealth effect of rising risk assets, further giving confluence to retail investors. On April 25th through the 27th, the World Bank and International Monetary Fund have meetings, which bring together central bankers, ministers of finance, and other executives, which is matched with a new moon on April 27th. All they'd have to do is say the word crypto and everyone will begin to salivate their favorite tickers. The more I reflect on this timeline, it's clearer to me that Trump is going to play a major role in the markets between now and March. He's pretty much a caricature of finance and the ultimate person to inspire confidence at what will be the worst possible time. Even when Biden was still president, I made a video that stated to mentally prepare yourself for Dump on Trump 2025, and here we are. Once we arrive in March, it seems that the overall conditions will take a turn for the worse. Not only is this eclipse season marking a macro downturn in this current Bitcoin cycle, it is also the third eclipse season, and historically Bitcoin has never run beyond it. Add in Mercury retrograde occurring perfectly between these eclipses, spring equinox, and a president that will more than likely command attention on the world stage, and you've got a recipe for disaster. Like I said, we can remain bullish until around March, maybe slightly after, but once the energy starts to pivot, pay attention to any serious news that you hear at that time, because they, for once, might actually be telling the truth with how it pertains to the market selling off. This will be Trump's first eclipse season while in office, and being that January 6th was the winter solstice in the Egyptian calendar and also the same day the media tried to kill the rising sun, or Trump, the spring equinox could include a ritual to celebrate the rising of the sun, at the least Easter Sunday. So when you're feeling good about the profits you've made this cycle, take them like your life depends on it. I can't tell you exactly when the top of any particular asset will be, but I'm telling you the season at which the energy will change. And it is possible for some alts to make higher highs on a retrace rally, but when in doubt and you see total 3 looking like this, it should be your final confirmation that selling is likely a logical choice. The name of the game is to compound, and I guarantee there will be better entries in the future. Nathan Rothschild was one of the richest men in the world, and when asked how he became so rich, he simply said, "I never buy at the bottom, and I always sell too soon." So remember to lock in those gains this spring, and I'll see you on the other side.